Hello friends, just a couple of seconds of your time before we get started. I just wanted to apologise in advance for my voice quality at the moment. I have a bit of a condition that does affect the larynx and it's sometimes difficult to talk, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get through this as best as I possibly can, but if it's not up to standard, please forgive me. Okay, let's get on with the show. Regular viewers of my channel will no doubt be aware that a handful of years ago, I took some of my collection, that's been in storage for several decades now, and put it out on display in what I call my nostalgia cabinet. However, within a few weeks of me doing this, our neighbours did something that I still haven't quite got to the bottom of, but whatever it was that they did, it caused our entire house to shake violently as if a thermonuclear device had gone off next door. The net result was this travesty. My almost mint-condition Denys Fisher TARDIS toy that had survived intact for the past 45 years or so was now broken. Frustratingly, one of the doors had sheared right off, snapping at the pin hinges, which meant that the doors could no longer hang in situ. In addition to that, somehow the top lamp had been snapped clean through, and this resulted in the internal mechanism becoming loose and detached. Bugger! So then, after a few years of displaying it back to front to hide the now missing doors, and with the lamp just balanced on top, I'm going to fix this. Plus I'll address a couple of cosmetic issues caused by years of me piloting it across the space-time linoleum. Thankfully this will be a rather straightforward affair, and relatively quick to achieve, but the results will be worth it, I believe. The first thing that I want to fix are the broken pin hinges. Thankfully I saved these back when the damage happened. These are notorious for snapping off, and to make it stronger, I suppose that I could just drill into the plastic and insert a short length of brass rod into it, but because the doors are so thin, there's no real way of doing this without the brass showing through on the blind side, which I'm really not keen on happening. Instead, I've decided to simply solvent weld the broken tabs back on. I mean, this is only for display purposes anyway, it's not as if I'm going to be playing with this anymore. All I had to do was make sure that each pin was on the right side and in the correct orientation. Luckily the breaks were clean, so it wasn't too fiddly to achieve. The solvent bonds within a few minutes, but it doesn't reach full strength until about 24 hours afterwards, so that's why I wanted to tackle this bit first, so that I could move on to other jobs while that all sets up. The next task for me was to remove the roof so that I could work on this project in a more convenient fashion with unhindered access to the inside. Luckily for me, with this being the first generation of the toy, the roof was simply glued on with a few dabs of adhesive to each side. Later at least it had plastic retaining studs that I always felt looked rather ugly and spoilt the look of the piece, so I'm kind of glad that I've got this version. Makes things a lot easier. Anyway, I took my trusty palette knife and slotted it in between the cardboard walls and the roof, and then I carefully ran it around until I could feel the separation happen, where it was then just a matter of lifting the top off. Doing this did result in a few tears to the printed cardboard surface here and there, but given that this is in an area that you won't really see, I'll not be losing any sleep over it. The internal cylinder, where all the magic happens to make the Doctor figure disappear and reappear, is largely fine, though it does have the remnants of the sticky backing from the now missing Velcro strip that would ordinarily hold the dolly in place as it spins around. This is something that I'll deal with in due course once I've made a decision on how I want to handle it. On the outside of the cylinder is more evidence of wear and tear, this time to the space-time vortex artwork. I think I'll be leaving this as it is, as this particular bit of damage illustrates its play with history, which I sort of like. Mind you, my YouTube colleague Dave over at Toy Poloi often refers to this as wabi-sabi, which I believe is the Japanese notion of accepting imperfection in things, so in that light I think I can live with it. At the top of the cylinder, in the lamp receiver slot, are a few shards of broken plastic from the bottom of the lamp. Much of it has fallen out, but there is still some stubborn sections in there that I still need to remove, so it's time to deploy my grinding bit and carefully work those bits out. There, all nice and clean. And now it's time to address that Velcro problem that I mentioned earlier, and for that I think I'm going to call upon an old trick that I used to use in the 1980s for getting troublesome price tags off of paperback book covers. Lighter fuel. No, I'm not going to be setting fire to it, but I will be using the properties of the naphtha to dissolve the ancient glue residue off the back of the tape, and if that doesn't work then I do have one other idea, but it may not actually come to that. I doused a liberal amount of the fuel over the area of interest and allowed it to soak in. Don't worry, because this is a solvent, it will eventually evaporate off, leaving no sign that it was ever there to begin with. Once it worked its magic, all there's left to do is to gently tease off the offending materials, and then we're done. Damn. I was rather hoping that would work. I mean, it did remove the tape as required. The only problem is I think the residue is so old, it's just reacting. So that isn't a tear, that is just the remnants of the original stickies. So I think what I'm going to do is go with plan B, which is just to cut a piece of black card and stick it in there. And then stick on the Velcro that I mustn't forget. Well, never mind. There you have it. Plan B worked, so we're done. Actually, I'm not done as I still need to replace that Velcro. Almost forgot about that in all this excitement. There. Now I'm done. While I've got all this open, I may as well show you how the mechanism actually works. It's surprisingly simple as there's almost nothing to it. On the roof are two buttons, green for appear and red for disappear. All they do is deploy a spring-mounted stopper on the underside of the roof that engages the resting flanges on the top of the cylinder. And that is basically it. Seriously, simplicity at its finest. Didn't take much to entertain us kids back in the 70s and 80s. Who needs the internet anyway when you have spinning dollies? The final thing to tackle before reassembly is to build a new spindle on the underside of the lamp, so that when it's pushed home through the roof, it'll engage with the top of the cylinder and allow the spinning action to actually happen. In the spirit of keeping things simple, I took a scrap of plastic square stock and the entire piece was chopped down to the correct length. I then welded this onto the underside of the lamp and set it aside overnight for the weld to reach full bonded strength. As this section will never be seen, I don't really need to paint it, but without it, it kind of feels like I've not finished it properly, so I gave it a quick token spray of black automotive spray just to pretty it up. Complete waste of time, no one's going to look at it. Anyway, all I had to do now was carefully put everything back together, stand back and admire my handiwork. You know, this is one of those small jobs that I've been putting off for way too long now, but I'm really glad that I've finally done it. I mean, it's about time, 3 years, for goodness sake. The doors are back on, the lamp is seated in its proper housing, and it's holding fast. Plus, the internal mechanism works once more, so it's back to being almost as good as new, and I just couldn't be happier. What more could you possibly ask for? Okay, I know it was a small project, but it was something small to get me back into the swing of things while I'm doing my other things out in the real world. But anyway, thank you so much for tagging along with me on what has been the 80th video for this channel. So until next time, stay safe, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next project. Take care now.